The sun was setting over the dusty plains, the sky painted with streaks of orange and purple, and the wind carried with it the scent of dry grass and gunpowder. Soldiers marched in rigid lines, their boots kicking up small clouds of dust, while the distant crackle of rifles echoed across the hills. Smoke rose in thin ribbons from burned homesteads, remnants of skirmishes that had claimed lives and torn families apart. She crouched behind a collapsed wagon, her rifle trembling in her hands. Her uniform was tattered, her boots caked in mud. She had been running for hours, dodging patrols, trying to survive in a war that seemed endless. Every step, every breath felt like a battle against not just the enemy, but exhaustion itself. And then she saw him. He was kneeling in the open, tending to a wounded comrade. His hat was slanted low over his eyes, his coat spattered with blood. She knew immediately he was the enemy, the side she had been trained to fear, to fight, to kill. And yet, something about him stopped her heart. Not the uniform, not the flag he carried, but the way he moved, careful, deliberate, not reckless. A shot rang out nearby and the man flinched. He looked up, scanning the horizon, and his eyes met hers. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Two strangers on opposite sides, locked in a gaze that neither could understand yet both felt. And then the chaos returned. A volley of bullets erupted from the ridge above. She fired instinctively, taking cover behind the wagon, her heart hammering. One of the shots hit the man in the shoulder. He stumbled, letting out a grunt of pain, and she felt a jolt of something, horror, maybe guilt, before the survival instinct took over. She could have finished him. She could have ended the enemy soldier and returned to her unit with another tally. But instead, she ran. She ran to him, risking her own life, ignoring the shouts of nearby soldiers, ignoring the war that had taught her hatred. She dropped to her knees beside him. Blood seeped through his coat, warm against her hands. "You're hurt bad," she whispered, panic rising. "I'll survive," he said through gritted teeth, wincing as she pressed a hand over the wound. Her heart pounded. The moment felt impossible, surreal. She was supposed to be killing him, and yet here she was, saving him. "Why?" he asked, pain and confusion in his voice. She hesitated. "Because no one deserves to die alone," she whispered. He chuckled softly, a grim sound that carried more disbelief than humor. "Even from the enemy." "Especially from the enemy," she said. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the battlefield. She dragged him behind the wagon, creating what little cover she could. Her hands shook as she tore strips from her own uniform to bind the wound. Every heartbeat felt like it might be her last, every shadow a potential threat. Hours passed. The fight moved on, soldiers retreating, leaving devastation in their wake. The field grew quieter, the smell of smoke and blood thick in the air. He groaned as he tried to sit up. "You saved me," he said, voice hoarse, disbelief written all over his face. She met his gaze. "I didn't save you. I saved a man, not a uniform, not a flag, just a man." He smiled faintly. "You're insane." "Maybe," she said. They moved through the remnants of the battlefield, helping each other across rough terrain. He leaned heavily on her, and she adjusted, careful not to let him fall. Neither spoke much, both aware that words were pointless in the face of survival. When they finally reached a small stream, she helped him wash the blood and dirt from his face. She noticed his eyes, green, sharp, and alert, even in pain. For a moment the war felt distant, irrelevant. They were two humans, alone in a world that had forgotten mercy. "I don't even know your name," he said softly. "Clara," she replied. "Elias," he said, offering a hand which she shook gently. And in that handshake, a fragile bond formed. Two enemies turned survivors, two strangers connected by a moment of courage and humanity. The next day they found an abandoned cabin in the woods, hidden from both armies. Clara tended to his wounds as best she could, and Elias taught her how to trap small game, how to purify water. Days passed, and with each passing moment, the line between enemy and ally blurred. They laughed softly, shared stories of their families, whispered hopes that felt foolish in a world consumed by war. One morning, soldiers came back to the woods, scouting for stragglers. Clara grabbed Elias, pulling him behind a fallen tree. Bullets splintered the earth around them. One of the rounds struck Elias in the chest. He fell, gasping, and Clara screamed. "Hold on," she cried, pressing her hands over the wound. She had no bandages, only desperation and the remnants of her courage. Elias looked at her, pain twisting his features. "Clara, I think you've saved me more than once." She shook her head, tears streaming. "You'll live, you have to. You can't leave me here alone." He coughed, blood staining his lips, and managed a weak smile. Maybe the war, it doesn't matter anymore. Not when," his voice faltered. "Not when you're here." Hours felt like days, but she refused to leave his side. She applied makeshift dressings, kept pressure on the wound, whispered promises she didn't know she could keep. Slowly, his breathing evened, his pulse steadied, and when the sun set, he opened his eyes. "You saved my life," he whispered. "You would have done the same," she said. He reached out a hand, brushing dirt from her cheek. "Maybe, not many would have." "Maybe," she murmured. In the following weeks, they navigated the dangerous territories together. They scavenged food, avoided patrols, and relied solely on each other. The war continued to rage around them, but in that small patch of woods, amidst the smoke and echoes of battle, something new was born: trust, friendship, something deeper neither dared to name. Eventually, they made it to a safe village, one neutral in the war, where they could rest. The villagers treated them with cautious curiosity, providing food and blankets. Elias recovered and Clara's injuries healed. But even in safety, the bond between them remained unbroken, forged in the fire of bullets, blood, and bravery. One night, sitting outside the small hut, watching stars flicker across the sky, Elias turned to Clara. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought I'd hate you forever, that I'd always see you as the enemy." She smiled, a faint glimmer of hope in her tired eyes. "And now?" "Now," he said, taking her hand in his, "I can't imagine a world where you're not beside me. The war, it doesn't matter anymore. It's just us." Tears brimmed in her eyes. Just us. And in that quiet moment, amidst a world that had tried to tear them apart, two strangers, on opposite sides of a war, realized that sometimes courage isn't about fighting. Sometimes it's about standing for someone else, taking a bullet for them, and realizing in the end that love and humanity can survive even in the darkest of battles. Elias squeezed her hand. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Clara nodded, her heart full, the baby of hope inside her womb of a world reborn. They had survived. They had found each other. And for the first time in years, the horizon didn't feel like the edge of a war. It felt like the beginning of everything.